So I saw the initial reaction, which I could expect. Like, Blizzard announces that they're basically building Hakili in game, which I think we even mentioned the words Hakili like in the interview. But most times when there are basically accessibility features for people with disabilities, or something that won't affect high-end players but is just there to make the game easier or more accessible for people who aren't as good or maybe don't care about being good, usually the high-end community, which is overwhelmingly supported on Twitter, right? Those people just get mad for basically no reason. So what I would say at the time, and even now, is if you play this game at a high level and you care about playing this game at a high level, the fact that this exists will literally never matter to you, and you will never encounter anyone or anything or think about this ever again. But obviously, they were just freaking the fuck out on Twitter because I don't know, just a lot of different takes. I disagreed with most of them. Some had some merit. If you're mad about LFR existing, this isn't for you. Yeah, and a lot of those people are mad. Like, I've never heard a credible argument for like, this game has too many difficulties, LFR shouldn't exist. I've never heard an argument about that was like, oh, that makes sense. It's just people like being gatekeepy, basically. Once I heard there was a GCD delay, yeah, so I mean, there's two parts of it, right? So there's just the Hakili part, which is just a part that shows on your screen that is there to show you like what you should press. And now I haven't seen this on the PTR. I don't know if it's like accurate. In fact, the few things in the game that Blizzard tries to suggest that you do, which is like they give you some like baseline talents. And as far as I can tell, a lot of those are like really bad. So I don't know if this is going to be made well. Typically things that Blizzard introduces into the game that are brand new, like all the way since Legion, they usually take a couple years to like really flesh out and be good. So I don't expect it to be great right away, but the fact that they're making it is still very good. But that is needed. Let's take away the one button thing right now entirely as a just separate issue. Just the Hakili part where it shows you in game, you don't need to download an add-on, and if you want, you can have some rotation assistance. That is huge. If you are mad about this, I am certain that you have not tried to show a new player how to play WoW in a long time. I've done this somewhat recently, where my ex-girlfriend was trying to learn WoW and she was playing Frostmage. And I told her to press Cold Snap and she opened her spell book and I realized that literally every button looked like it could be called Cold Snap. And there was like 30 of them. And I'm like, wow, I've never thought about that because I've played WoW forever. But you know what? That's really fucking confusing. And that totally makes sense. Also, a lot of WoW's rotations can be complex. I think it's really good in this game that there are some specs that are not, right? Why we don't have homogenized difficulty in all of our specs is because we can, if you really want to play the game on easy mode, there's a few specs that are just objectively easy. And that's good for the game. They're also really well made and pretty fun to play at a high level too. Mainly like Ret Paladin and BM Hunter, I think. And I think that that is good. But for a lot of the other specs, there's really a lot that can change. And if you're just starting from square one, it's really hard to understand. So without even using the one button thing, I think just as a learning tool, Hakili is just a great thing to use. And then there's the side of Hakili, which is, oh, well, like people are going to complain, oh, you're never going to get good if you use something like that. First of all, I think it's possible you could use something like that and then wean yourself off of it and basically use it to teach you what's good and then remove it once you know, right? A learning tool. And then there are people who use it forever. And then I think the biggest disconnect that I saw on Twitter that day before I left, that was basically the last day I paid attention to any WoW news. Because, you know, I was pretty involved with it. I was in the interview with him. It's crazy. Okay, it's not surprising knowing Twitter. Like, there's not a lot of socially well-adjusted people on Twitter. Like, it is kind of a hellhole for people who like hellholes. So I wasn't surprised to see this on Twitter, but the amount of people just simply not understanding that there are a ton of people that play WoW that are not only not good, but do not give a fuck about ever being good at the game. They don't care. They love the game, and being really good at it is not something they care about. That is by far the biggest disconnect. I feel like if more people understood that, there's no way that reaction would have been what it was. Although maybe it is, because most times anything is announced, the reaction is just seen from a negative light because everyone's just like a jaded, been playing WoW for too long and they're not a kid anymore kind of thing. But yeah, that was the main thing. And then the one button rotation. So he answered a lot of questions about this. I think there is potential harm in that. And if it's like, basically, if you're a new player and you could do the learning Hakili thing, or you could just do the one button thing. The reality is most players, even with a whatever GCD penalty it is, I don't know if it was like a point whatever second or just a 25% longer. I think they actually recently changed it. I read a tweet today. But if you guys have ever seen a bad player before, if you were allowing them to just spam one button and it's actually the right rotation and they have a GCD penalty, they'll do way more damage than they were before. Like way more, because they're literally just backpedaling in circles and just pressing random buttons. We had a potty T recently where like someone was basically pressing ice lance as their only button in like a guild, and they were telling people what to do and stuff. Like these people exist all over the place, right? And I think during like using the one button rotation, you will like those people will maybe never go back to it because they're like, what the hell? Like I'm doing, 5 times more damage by just pressing one button than actually trying to play the game. Maybe the game isn't as fun for me anymore because I'm doing that. But maybe those people are equaled out by people who are like, wait, I can actually contribute. I'm not very good at the game. I don't care about being good, but now I can actually feel like I'm not a burden by just pressing this one button or something like that, Replace Ice Lance with just the one button, except you just do more damage, basically. It would make a lot of people play better as well. But I do think it's just so easy to obtain. Like, if doing 75%, if these are made well, and I'm sure there's going to be varying quality of these from spec to spec, but if these are made well, most people who play the game are not going to be able to do 75% of what's capable of your class, and this basically will be able to do that. So it's kind of like, what's the point of trying to learn? And then like maybe the long-term effect of that is that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, people aren't very good because they've just too many people use this thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I'm not quite sure about that, but I think the benefits outweigh. So basically I'm like really high on the Hakili thing, like really, really high on it. I think it's great. The one button rotation was an interesting addition to that. And basically like as far as you could go with that line of thinking. I think it does have some positive benefits, certainly great for anyone with disabilities. And I think that might be like the primary reason for it. But yeah, I'm like a little mix on that one. I think overall good though. And I would say most of the people who are mad about it I would guess, are never going to be negatively interactive with this at all. And they're basically just like yelling at nothing. And then the one take I saw was like, with the one button rotation, we're going to have a lot of bad players now in higher level content. And I actually look at that the opposite way. So if you're looking at a player who's really struggling, they're not doing really well, they're not doing a lot of damage, they're dying to everything, I think the introduction of the one button thing can only potentially help that, because the reason they're dying to everything and not doing a lot of damage is clearly the combination of doing both of those things is overloading their brain. They can't do it. It's too hard. Now, if you just remove one of those things and you just spam one button that you're not even thinking about, any human on Earth is going to be way better at the other thing because you've just removed half or maybe more than half of the things you're thinking about. So if you ever run into those bad players, I would argue if they choose to use that tool, they will probably do better. And maybe you wouldn't even notice them, right? Outside of maybe their movement would be pretty obvious, I think. But I think they'll clearly do better, right? Did they talk about why they decided to start with the Hakili replacement? I'd have thought DBM and details would be way easier for them to make. Probably because of its importance. I mean, I actually didn't get to ask them that, so I'm kind of guessing here. This is not from them. Also, I don't think I can talk about anything that was said outside of the interview due to an NDA. I don't like NDAs. I don't really know how they work, but I mean, obviously I can talk about the fact that I was there for an interview because you all saw it, but I'm pretty sure any kind of conversations we had outside of that, I couldn't. But also, fucking NDA, you know what I mean? But also not. But also no. They didn't mention anything about that, but I imagine it's just important. So there's a few barriers when you're a new WoW player, but I think hitting max level and trying to understand how to like actually play this game and like play your character is probably the biggest or one of the biggest barriers, like correctly. And this directly addresses that if done well. And I think I would imagine that's why they went after it first. Maybe it's also the least complicated. It's something they have control over. Like, for example, they stated that they wanted to get rid of in-fight weak auras, like the ones that solve fights for you. I think they know that that's going to be really hard to do. At least it'll be really easy to do if they were to just nuke every add-on in like instances. Then maybe that's the end game if they can build enough of this stuff in game. But that would also be a terrible thing to do right away. So like, obviously they want to do it correctly, which is let you keep all the stuff that doesn't harm you in raids and only makes your game better if you choose to have it for you. It's like personal preference. And then just remove the stuff they think is that everyone thinks is really bad, which are those weak auras, right? But that's going to take a lot of time. So maybe this was just they wanted to start a conversation about these things, but also I'm really interested that they're willing to have that conversation. This is very anti-old Blizzard. Like they would never have done that. Like they basically flew us down there just to say like they're willing to do a lot of stuff in the future that they're not doing yet. That's pretty rare. You were there? I thought they just put you in with the after effects. Bro, I'm not cardboard. Is class design inherently going to lead to too complex rotations? I think the weirdest thing in this game right now is like when buttons on their own don't do anything, but like when you hover their tooltip with the right add-on, it'll just show you that it has interactions with like 15 talents. Like Renewing Mist is one that comes to mind, where it's just like, I think that maybe is like a little complicated. But I actually disagree. I've heard a little bit of a take of like the fact that this is needed at all proves that WoW's rotations are too complex, and I heavily disagree with that. I think there's like a few potential solutions that you could do, and I have problems with all of them. Number one is you homogenize the game. You make the game have less buttons, and every single class becomes easier to play and easier to understand. I think this would be horrible. I think other games have done this. I think the fact that WoW has very playable classes and as very easy classes, but also harder ones to master. The fact that Surrender to Madness can exist in a game and also BM Hunter can exist at the same time is perfectly fine because players have something to interact with if they want it. When you're talking about dumbing the game down versus just adding tools to help you learn, it's just a very simple thing, right? If you make classes really complex and really rewarding. So if they're made, let's assume everything is made well, making something really complex, which is very hard to learn, but becomes more fun to replay and more fun to master, you are servicing the existing player or maybe the future player who really expects a lot from themselves, but you're mainly serving the existing player who's been playing. There's a lot of those, by the way, that play WoW. The easier you make classes, the more you are catering towards the newer player or the player that is not as good to be able to compete, or a newer player being able to learn and be able to do it at all reasonably before they quit, right? So they're two totally, you're serving totally different audiences by doing one or the other. So I'm biased because I'm a player that's been playing WoW for a long time. Them dumbing the game down would make all of the specs I play less fun, and that sounds awful. But for the new player, I could totally see it. I think WoW is mostly kept alive by returning players, actually. I think them making a push for new players getting the game is great, but I think Blizzard trying to make a decision like, oh, instead of doing this Hakili tool, let's just make everything easier. I think they're doing a disservice to the vast majority of their player base, which is not only a huge risk, it's probably just a bad idea. So they're doing a middle ground, which is we're going to keep some of the specs complex. If you want to play an easy spec, oh boy, do they exist. It's like I guess like I-Beam Havoc is maybe, I don't even know if Havoc fits into that category anymore, but there's like a few specs that are piss fucking easy if you want to play them. And then there's specs with a lot of ease and a lot of hard to them. And then there's specs that are like pretty fucking hard. And all those can exist in the same game. And it's good, right? Havoc isn't easy if you want to be optimal. Yeah, so like Havoc I struggle saying Havoc because it depends on what build you're playing. Like, to be honest with you, for the past since Legion, like 8 years ago, if you were playing DH, the version where you just I-beam and there's no momentum whatsoever, it's purely you press I-beam on cooldown, meta on cooldown, don't cap your fury, and like don't miss GCDs, and you're doing as much damage as you can possibly do, right? And hit Blade Dance on cooldown. That version of DH is objectively easy. That is not hard at all. But there are versions of DH that I've played that were very hard. Like Inertia, Season 3, Dragonflight, Inertia, Havoc DH had a very high skill ceiling. You basically didn't lose to someone you were better than in that class, in a dungeon or a raid boss. You could just gap people. Like saying that spec was like really easy is wrong. So it kind of depends on what version you're playing, but I think for the majority of like casual players, if you say Havoc is easy, you're talking about that build and they're right. I think that's why Ret Paladin is one of the most impressive things in World of Warcraft in general, because Ret Paladin is an easy spec to play, but it also is really fun to play if you're good at the game. Like it's not like you're like, oh man, this is boring. But like Ret has high level optimization and also is just made really well. It's just sick. Even though it's really easy, it's still really fun.